Welcome to the Truth Champion Podcast with Ashley Yablon. Join us as Ashley taps into his wealth of experience as a lawyer, a leader, an educator, and an author to inform and inspire others. Listen as Ashley unpacks the real-life implications of standing for what is right against all odds, the pitfalls of blind ambition, and above all, the need to be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of the Truth Champion podcast. We're going to talk. Today's episode is going to be called "The Consequences of Blind Ambition" and how Ashley felt during his process. So, first things first, Ashley, how are you, my friend? Are you well?
Doing great. Good to see you, Paul.
Good to see you too. You're looking great. And this recording is just after Thanksgiving. So, did you have a nice time with the family and friends? You have a nice holiday season?
Had a wonderful holiday. Yes, thank you for asking. Thank you so much.
Perfect. No, wonderful. So today's episode, I think, is probably going to be slightly different. I know in the previous two, we've probably looked back a little bit more, but this more is going to be probably, maybe some of the red flags that you saw as you were going through your journey, but then also looking forward, how life has been with you since you've been through this, because obviously, we spoke on episode 1 or 2 about you having to, you were worried about your life. You were hiding, you were ducking and diving. So we could talk a little bit about that. So let's backtrack. So you're going through the process again. You're hearing all these red flags. Which red flags did you consciously ignore, and which red flags did you kind of go subconsciously ignore? Was there anything that when you look back now and you're going, oof, that was a bit risky?
Yeah, great question. I think the very first red flag, if I look back now, was what I call that, ironically, the Thanksgiving Day meeting. And it was that Wednesday before Thanksgiving when they basically said to me, "Hey, you're gonna swear to our lies, basically, and you're gonna be the one standing up on Capitol Hill, telling everyone we've done nothing wrong." And that should have been a huge red flag to me. But at the time, again, blind ambition, I didn't see it just waving in my face.
Wow, yeah, that's good. With hindsight, that's such a major red flag, right? Where you go, so you're asking me to do something to basically back up what you're saying, and everybody here knows it isn't true, but we're just going to do it anyway, right?
Correct.
That's huge. That's huge.
Looking back, that was probably the biggest, and that was number one, I guess. And then there were several along the way that should have been the tip-off point, but I, again, didn't see it because I didn't want to see it.
I know, right? That's the key. So in terms of the big, so you're talking there about the smaller red flags. I guess do you know some that really come to mind in terms of the smaller ones? And then as you've gone through kind of these red flags, your brain will just suddenly pick up on little things, right? And all of a sudden it becomes a massive issue, right? Is that what happened with you, where you kind of were seeing all these little red flags, so to speak, or maybe even yellow flags?
I didn't see them until almost towards the very end when I realized that I needed to be the whistleblower, and I didn't see them. And then, you become reflective and you look back once you're sitting in the FBI's office and you're telling the tale and you're explaining everything. And then it becomes really apparent. It's real transparent when you're discussing it out loud versus in your brain when each of these events would happen. You didn't see them, or at least I didn't. But when I retell the story and you're sitting down and explaining to the FBI and they're doing a 32-page affidavit on everything that you said, you start to realize, oh my gosh, how about that one? That was a red flag. And oh my gosh, that was another one. So as an example, after that, what I call the Thanksgiving meeting was early part of December, was when they called me, and I think this is in the book, but they called me and said, "Hey, can you explain to us a legal way of exporting to the embargoed countries?" And they say,
wait, just pause. Say that again.
And they say it so flippantly, and it's so cavalier. But what they were saying was, can you tell us how we can sell to the embargoed countries legally? And I just it baffled my brain. It baffled my brain, and I thought, am I really hearing that correctly? So looking back, I can say, wow, that was crazy, or that was another red flag. But at the time, I didn't see it, and I guess I didn't want to believe it.
I think for me, given the fact that we've got to know each other really well, I can't imagine you being in this situation where, and obviously you were in it, you know, that's exactly what we're doing, what we're talking about. But it seems to me, knowing how grounded you are and knowing what a value-led person you are, that these red flags didn't hit sooner for you to go, oh, I'm in a situation here. And it just sounds to me that it just boiled down to, like you say, blind ambition, and you just ignored the warning signs, whether they were big flashing red ones or, you know, the smaller ones, the ones we were chatting about before. Is there any other examples that you've got of red flags that you ignored? And is my assumption correct? And feel free to, you know, throw me out if I'm not correct, mate.
Well, you're 100% correct. Uh, this was everything. You have to understand the blind ambition. This was everything I'd ever wanted. This is everything I'd
Yeah.
worked for, all the sacrifices I had made. And finally, it had culminated to this opportunity. And so when you get what you want, be careful what you want, but when you get it, you don't see all the other things that you should have been looking at and been more studious in your dealings and your uh, before taking the position. Were there other red flags? Absolutely. I can think of being in China and them basically asking me, because again, you got to remember, they had just sent over hundreds of millions of dollars of spying technology, huge cell towers, everything. And these are in huge, large wooden crates. And they're sitting in Iran and they're waiting for ZTE to install them. And they had gotten busted. The Reuters had found out that they had shipped these. They had the contract. They had the packing list. Imagine a packing list. We all know a packing list that you go to IKEA and you get a packing list and tells you everything in the box. Now imagine a 900 and some odd page packing list telling you of all the spying technology that are in these wooden crates, huge boxes in a warehouse. And what happened was Reuters found out they had the packing list, they had the contract, and the story came out, and ZTE was so concerned as to how did they get it? How did they get it? And here's another red flag. How did they get it? And I said, that shouldn't be our concern how they got it. We need to figure out what we need to do. Why are you so concerned about how they got it? How did they get it? And I'll never forget, Marsha said to me, because now we can't hide anything. Think about that. That was a huge red flag. We can't hide anything.
That's massive. Say that. So Marsha said to you, we now can't hide anything. Oh, that's huge, right?
Huge, huge. And when I got to China and we were going through and discussing what are we going to do, the number two in charge of the legal department came to me. He was in a small cluster with a group of other Chinese lawyers who were there who worked for ZTE, and they were all discussing what they were going to do. And so imagine this group of Chinese attorneys, all with ZTE employees, and then they would huddle up. Then one would come over to me and ask a question, and it became almost uh, comedic because he would come to me and say, they would talk. He would come to me and say, okay, what if we say that we never shipped any of that equipment? We never shipped it. What if we say that? And I said, well, the cat's already out of the bag. You can't do that. They already know. Okay. And then he would walk back to the group and they would keep talking. And then he would come back and he would say, okay, what if we do this? What if we go and we take out all those US component parts that's in all that equipment? And I said, again, it's too late. They already know that you've shipped it. Changing out the parts from US parts to other parts from other countries doesn't change the thing. They already know. Okay. And then he went back and they had another discussion. It was, like I said, and then we come back to me and say, okay, what about this? What if we scratch out? What if we open up all those crates and we scratch out all the serial numbers on all those US component parts? And I said, again, it's the same thing. It doesn't matter. They already know what you've done. Okay. Then the biggest red flag that hit me over the head, and this is when I knew I was really in a pickle, was when right after he got done asking and saying all that, uh, he comes back to me and he says, "Okay, we're going to comply. We're going to give the U.S. government all the information that they want. We'll give them the contracts. We'll give them all the information that they want." And he walks off. And then Marcia
Hmm.
comes to me and she said, "Ashley, do you know what they're saying?" And I said, "I don't know what you mean." And she said, "What they're saying is they're telling you that they're going to comply. They're not going to comply. And you, Ashley, are going to be the person that has to go and explain it to the government. They're going to shred everything. They're going to lie. And you're going to be the one who says, hey, we're doing everything legitimate."
So maybe just remind people what role does Marsha play on this? Where does she fall in in the whole scheme of things?
So when I became the general counsel, they didn't allow me to have a staff, but they gave me a staff of 3 Chinese attorneys from China. So they're not U.S. licensed, so they
Okay.
can't really practice in the U.S. And they were all very young. And again, there was 3 of them. There was Hong, Michael, and Marcia. Obviously, those aren't their real names.
Yeah.
They're
Understood.
but that's Marcia was kind of my confidant. So she would tell me a lot of things that were going on. Back because you have to remember they're working here in the US, and then at night, because of the time difference, they're on conference calls back to China. So they're working around the clock. And Marcia would be a valuable person for me with valuable information. She gave me all kinds of details of things that were happening on these phone calls when she's back with the legal department back in China. So that's how Marcia was kind of my conduit. And if you read the book, Marcia would tell me all kinds of things. And she said, well, we need to come up with a code word of when I tell you things that this is private or confidential. And I said, okay. And you could tell that she had spent some time thinking about it because I said, well, what do you want that code word to be? And she said, magic. And I said, magic? She said, magic. So whenever Marcia would come and tell me something that she learned from China or learned on one of these calls, she would always preface it with Ashley, magic. And I knew this was something that
Wow.
maybe I wasn't supposed to know, but when Marcia came and told me, hey, they're going to destroy everything, they're going to shred everything, she prefaced it with magic.
Magic. I guess as well, it must have been, well, I don't know if it was difficult for Marcia. It sounds like she's very much like you in terms of driven by values, where she had to feel she had to come and to talk to you about it. But is that a fair assumption? I know you can't go into too much detail, but was Marcia very similar to you in terms of how she valued values?
She really was. And Marcia was probably my favorite person there, and she did have strong values. I could tell,
Yeah.
and I worry so much about what has happened or where is Marcia. I don't know. People ask me that all the time when I
That
give
was
a
my
speech.
next question. So you've already
Is
beat me to the next question.
the last information I got was from so Marcia would texted me,
Okay.
and when everything went down at the beginning of all this, she texted and said, "Why are you making up these lies? Why are you lying?" And I knew that it was either not Marcia that I was texting,
Hmm.
or it was Marcia covering her tracks. And that was the last I ever heard from her.
That's a shame. That's a shame, but a very difficult position that you both found yourselves in. Um, Ashley, to kind of summarize before we move on to the next step, when you spoke about all these red flags, the one thing that I wanted to speak to you about was when you were talking to the FBI. Did you, when you were going through it and you were explaining to them, what had been happening, at what point did you go, whoa, this is this is big? Because I've done it in my personal and professional life when somebody said, Paul, can you, share a story about what happened in this situation? And I've shared it and I've gone, do you know what? That was worse than I remember it. Sorry, it's worse than I remember it when I've recalled it, right? Because your brain and memory do some funky things. Was that a similar story, a similar experience for you?
Yes. I remember sitting, it was in my criminal lawyer's office, and I sat down at a conference room table with the two FBI agents I'd been working with,
Mhm.
and I spent the whole day with them. And it was probably around lunchtime when we took a break, and my attorney brought in some water, and we were taking a break. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I've just shared obviously everything with the FBI,
Yeah.
but hearing it back, hearing me say the words to them made it real. That's when all of a sudden the red flags became really red flags,
Real
and
red flags, right?
real red flags. It wasn't just something that that happened that I didn't pay attention to. That blind ambition finally caught up when you're sitting there with the FBI. And I remember it really hit me when I sat at the lunch break with the FBI and thought, what did I just tell them? Oh my gosh, this is absolutely crazy. And there were a zillion red flags that I just didn't see.
And at this point, I'd just like to remind our viewers that look, why we may be saying some things with and we laugh at the back of it is not to belittle what Ashley or anybody else has done through. It's just really to try to humanize it, really, because this is just a story of great bravery and great endeavor. And Ashley, I think you are a credit not only to yourself, to your family, but to the human race, mate, to to doing what you did. To be fair, let's not get too emotional. Let's just move on to the next part. So something I really wanted to talk to you about was the consequences. So, we've titled this episode "The Consequences of Blind Ambition," without pulling any punches. And I don't want you, I don't want you to pull anything. I want you to share exactly with that with our audience out there. What's it been like for you since you blew the whistle? What basically has been your consequences of blind ambition?
So all of this went down in 2011, 2012. And for about a period of 2 years, I couldn't get a job. No one would hire
Wow.
me. I felt like I had a stigma, uh, like a mark on me, but I couldn't get a job. And you got to remember, up to that point, I had spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, taken all my savings, borrowed from family and friends to pay 5 different attorneys to represent me: criminal attorneys, whistleblower attorneys, employment attorneys, you name it. So I lost a ton of money. And it's at those times that you find out who your real friends are. So what happened? I felt like I was like a pariah. Someone didn't. No one wanted to hire me, and I couldn't understand it. And I just chalked it up to the fact that, well, I guess it's the mark of being the former general counsel of ZTE, or maybe it was the fact that I was a whistleblower and no one wanted that guy to be their attorney. We bring him in. Oh my gosh, what is he going to do? Is he going to whistleblow on us? Uh, so those were the consequences, and I had to, in a way, reinvent myself and realized that maybe I wouldn't be a general counsel ever again. And
Mhm.
so um, I needed to be an attorney, of course, that's my profession, but who's going to hire me? So the consequences were staggering. To lose yourself in the marketplace, to lose your career, to lose everything that you'd wanted, and try to reinvent yourself. That was extremely tough, and it took a real toll on me emotionally and physically.
Yeah, I'm sure I can imagine. I was just wondering then, I find that a little bit, I don't want to say backward because I don't mean backward, but I find that strange that, you know, companies out there don't want to hire somebody who has high values in case they call them out in terms of things that they shouldn't be doing. But they shouldn't be doing those things in the first place,
Right.
right?
Right. It does seem kind of backwards, doesn't it?
It doesn't. You'd have thought somebody, you coming onto the marketplace and unfortunate circumstances, 100%, but certainly somebody of your caliber and your, I guess, integrity, you'd have thought they'd have snapped their hands off. So, mate, you had to go through that, and then building yourself up. I've had to reinvent myself a couple of times, but certainly not to the extent that you've done. So kudos to you now. So, where are you now in terms of like the career journey?
I'm probably in the best place I've ever been, to be honest. and it took a
Wow.
while to get here. It took a while, and I couldn't be happier with my career. What I do now is almost like a consultant, and I come in and assist law firm, actually not law firms, but companies in their legal department, and it's that role I really enjoy. And obviously with the book, and then being a speaker, this is kind of where I've wanted to be. I didn't think this was going to be my choice. I never envisioned that this was what I wanted to do. Circumstances in life just created it, and I've tried to take advantage of it. But I'm probably the happiest I've been career-wise, because I'm doing so many things and tried to take a bad situation and turn it into a good one for myself.
It's a very stoic approach, my friend. Kudos to you. It would have sent a lot of people off the track. So, very, very well done to yourself. The last thing, people listening out there, they'll be, inspired by your journey. What advice have you got for people out there that may be blinded by ambition? Is it even possible to stop? Is it even, when you get to a place where you've worked so hard for, how do you, I guess, how do you stop being blinded by ambition? Can you even be stopped?
That's a great question. I talk about this a lot in the book, and I mentioned that be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. And I guess I'm not guarded, I'm not reserved, but I go into things now looking at it with eyes wide open.
Okay.
And that's really my advice. Yes, ambition is great. It's what steers us all, but you have to always be looking and thinking, I remember what my dad used to say, and now it becomes so prophetic. My dad would always look at a situation, and before doing anything, he would say, what is the worst that can happen? Because we can all look at a situation and with rose-colored glasses and think, I know all the great things that are going to happen. And I guess I lost that advice, and I lost that along the way. But now I try to think that, what is the worst that can happen? And I try to manage things and look at things through that lens. And so my advice to anyone is to look at things and say, what's the worst that can happen? We all can look and think what the positives are. But try to have more of a balanced approach. That's my advice. And I say that as if it's easy. Of course it's not, but remind yourself, what is the worst that can happen? And sometimes those answers might lead you to say, hey, this isn't a situation for me. Maybe this isn't the best situation. And that's what I try to do now.
I think for me, the key statement you said there was balanced. It's very easy to get, blinkered and say all the good things, but sometimes you just need to reflect, not just on your professional life, but also your personal life, and make sure that you're going in the direction you want to go in, that you're turning into the person, you're growing into the person that you want to be. Correct?
Correct. Always have that moral compass. That's the big thing. Always
Absolutely.
keep that at stake, and that's key. That's key.
That-
Easier said than done.
It really is. It really is in more or less any given situation, right? But cool. Ashley, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for your time and your insights and your bravery. This has been episode 3 of the Truth Champion podcast. We've called today's episode A Consequence of Blind Ambition. And it really is just a synopsis, really, of Ashley's story in terms of, maybe ignoring certain red flags and the impact of those red flags has had on his career pre and post. We are now available across all podcast platforms. We're on Google. We are even on Apple, Spotify, and Amazon. And Ashley, where's the best place that people can get in touch with you?
Sure. You can always come to my website, which is ashleyyablon.com. And like you mentioned, I'm also on social media, whether it's LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter.
Excellent. Ashley, thank you very much for your time. Audience members, please download, subscribe, and rate and reviews. We really want to know what you think of the podcast. So thank you very, very much. Have a wonderful day. Take care, everybody. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you for listening to the Truth Champion podcast with Ashley Yablon. To find out more, please visit www.ashleyyablon.com. or follow Ashley on social media. Let us know what you thought of today's podcast or suggest topics you'd like Ashley to cover in the future.